Text 52. This universal egg, or the universe in the shape of an egg, is called the manifestation of material energy. Its layers of water, air, fire, sky, ego, and Mahatattva increase in thickness one after another. Each layer is 10 times bigger than the previous one, and the final outside layer is covered by pradana. Within this egg is the universal form of Lord Hari, of whose body the 14 planetary systems are parts. Purport: this universe, or the universal sky, which we can visualize with its innumerable planets, is shaped just like an egg. As an egg is covered by a shell, the universe is also covered by various layers. The first layer is water, the next is fire, then air, then sky, and the ultimate holding crust is pradana. Within this egg-like universe is the universal form of the Lord as the Virat Purusha. All the different planetary situations are part of his body. This is already explained in the beginning of Srimad Bhagavatam, 2nd Canto. The planetary systems are considered to form different bodily parts of that universal form of the Lord. Persons who cannot directly engage in the worship of the transcendental form of the Lord are advised to think of and worship this universal form. The lowest planetary system, Patala, is considered to be the soul of the Supreme Lord, and the earth is considered to be the belly of the Lord. Brahmaloka, or the highest planetary system, where Brahma lives, is considered to be the head of the Lord. This Virat Purusha is considered an incarnation of the Lord. The original form of the Lord is Krishna, as confirmed in Brahma Samhita Adi Purusha. The Virat Purusha is also Purusha, but he is not Adi Purusha. The Adi Purusha is Krishna. Ishvara Parama Krishna Satchidananda Vigraha Anadir Adir Govinda. In Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is also accepted as the Adi Purusha, the original. Krishna says, "No one is greater than I." There are innumerable expansions of the Lord, and all of them are Purushas, or enjoyers, but neither the Virat Purusha, nor the Purusha avatars, Karanodakasai Vishnu, Garbhodakasai Vishnu, and Ksirodakasai Vishnu, nor any of the many other expansions is the original. In each universe there are Garbhodakasai Vishnu, the Virat Purusha, and Ksirodakasai Vishnu. The active manifestation of the Virat Purusha is described here. Persons who are in the lower grade of understanding regarding the Supreme Personality of Godhead may think of the universal form of the Lord, for that is advised in the Bhagavatam. The dimensions of the universe are estimated here. The outer covering is made of layers of water, air, fire, sky, ego, and Mahatattva, and each layer is 10 times greater than the one previous. The space within the hollow of the universe cannot be measured by any human scientist or anyone else, and beyond the hollow there are 7 coverings, each one 10 times greater than the one preceding it. The layer of water is 10 times greater than the diameter of the universe, and the layer of fire is 10 times greater than that of water. Similarly, the layer of air is 10 times greater than that of fire. These dimensions are all inconceivable to the tiny brain of a human being. It is also stated that this description is of only one egg-like universe. There are innumerable universes besides this one, and some of them are many, many times greater. It is considered, in fact, that this universe is the smallest. Therefore, the predominating superintendent, or Brahma, has only 4 heads for management. In other universes, which are far greater than this one, Brahma has more heads. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, it is stated that all these Brahmas were called one day by Lord Krishna on the inquiry of the small Brahma, who, after seeing all the larger Brahmas, was thunderstruck. That is the inconceivable potency of the Lord. No one can measure the length and breadth of God by speculation or by false identification with God. These attempts are symptoms of lunacy. Text 53. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Virat Purusha, situated himself in that golden egg, which was lying on the water, and he divided it into many departments. Text 54. First of all, a mouth appeared in him, and then came forth the organ of speech, and with it the god of fire, the deity who presides over that organ. Then a pair of nostrils appeared, and in them appeared the olfactory sense, as well as prana, the vital air. Purport: With the manifestation of speech, fire also became manifested, and with the manifestation of nostrils, the vital air, the breathing process, and the sense of smell also became manifested. Text 55. In the wake of the olfactory sense came the wind god, who presides over that sense. Thereafter a pair of eyes appeared in the universal form, and in them the sense of sight. In the wake of this sense came the sun god, who presides over it. Next there appeared in him a pair of ears, and in them the auditory sense, and in its wake the Digdevatas, or the deities who preside over the directions. Purport. The appearance of different bodily parts of the Lord's universal form and the appearance of the presiding deities of those bodily parts is being described. As in the womb of a mother, a child gradually grows different bodily parts, so in the universal womb, the universal form of the Lord gives rise to the creation of various paraphernalia. The senses appear, and over each of them there is a presiding deity. It is corroborated by this statement of Srimad Bhagavatam, and also by Brahma Samhita, that the sun appeared after the appearance of the eyes of the universal form of the Lord. The sun is dependent on the eyes of the universal form. The Brahma Samhita also says that the sun is the eye of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. Yakchakshur esha savita. Savita means the sun. The sun is the eye of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Actually, everything is created by the universal body of the Supreme Godhead. Material nature is simply the supplier of materials. The creation is actually done by the Supreme Lord, as confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 9:10. Mayadhyakshana prakriti suyate sa charakaram. Under my direction does material nature create all moving and non-moving objects in the cosmic creation. Text 56. Then the universal form of the Lord, the Virat Purusha, manifested his skin, and thereupon the hair, mustache, and beard appeared. After this all the herbs and drugs became manifested, and then his genitals also appeared. Purport. The skin is the site of the touch sensation. The demigods who control the production of herbs and medicinal drugs are the deities presiding over the tactile sense. Text 57. After this, semen, the faculty of procreation, and the god who presides over the waters appeared. Next appeared an anus, and then the organs of defecation, and thereupon the god of death, who is feared throughout the universe. Purport. It is understood herewith that the faculty to discharge semen is the cause of death. Therefore, yogis and transcendentalists who want to live for greater spans of life voluntarily restrain themselves from discharging semen. The more one can restrain the discharge of semen, the more one can be aloof from the problem of death. There are many yogis living up to 300 or 700 years by this process, and in the Bhagavatam it is clearly stated that discharging semen is the cause of horrible death. The more one is addicted to sexual enjoyment, the more susceptible he is to a quick death. Text 58. Thereafter the two hands of the universal form of the Lord became manifested, and with them the power of grasping and dropping things, and after that Lord Indra appeared. Next the legs became manifested, and with them the process of movement, and after that Lord Vishnu appeared. Purport. The deity presiding over the hands is Indra, and the presiding deity of movement is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vishnu. Vishnu appeared on the appearance of the legs of the Virat Purusha. Text 59. The veins of the universal body became manifested, and therefore the red corpuscles, or blood, in their wake came the rivers, the deities presiding over the veins, and then appeared an abdomen. Purport. Blood veins are compared to rivers. When the veins are manifested in the universal form, the rivers in the various planets were also manifested. The controlling deity of the rivers is also the controlling deity of the nervous system. In Ayurvedic treatment, those who are suffering from the disease of nervous instability are recommended to take a bath by dipping into a flowing river. Text 60. Next grew feelings of hunger and thirst, and in their wake came the manifestation of the oceans. Then a heart became manifest, and in the wake of the heart the mind appeared. Purport. The ocean is considered to be the presiding deity of the abdomen, where the feelings of hunger and thirst originate. When there is an irregularity in hunger and thirst, one is advised, according to Ayurvedic treatment, to take a bath in the ocean. Text 61. After the mind, the moon appeared, intelligence appeared next, and after intelligence, Lord Brahma appeared. Then the false ego appeared, and then Lord Shiva, and after the appearance of Lord Shiva came consciousness, and the deity presiding over consciousness. Purport. The moon appeared after the appearance of mind, and this indicates that the moon is the presiding deity of mind. Similarly, Lord Brahma, appearing after intelligence, is the presiding deity of intelligence, and Lord Shiva, who appears after false ego, is the presiding deity of false ego. In other words, it is indicated that the moon god is the mode of goodness, whereas Lord Brahma is in the mode of passion, and Lord Shiva is in the mode of ignorance. The appearance of consciousness after the appearance of false ego indicates that, from the beginning, material consciousness is under the mode of ignorance, and that one therefore has to purify himself by purifying his consciousness. This purificatory process is called Krishna consciousness. As soon as the consciousness is purified, the false ego disappears. Identification of the body with the self is called false identification, or false ego. Lord Chaitanya confirms this in his Shikshastaka. He states that the first result of chanting the Mahamantra, Hare Krishna, is that dirt is cleared from the consciousness, or the mirror of the mind, and then at once the blazing fire of material existence is over. The blazing fire of material existence is due to false ego, but as soon as the false ego is removed, one can understand his real identity. At that point, he is actually liberated from the clutches of Maya. As soon as one is freed from the clutches of false ego, his intelligence also becomes purified, and then his mind is always engaged upon the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Supreme Personality of Godhead appeared on the full moon day as Gaurachandra, or the spotless transcendental moon. The material moon has spots on it, but on the transcendental moon, Gaurachandra, there are no spots. In order to fix the purified mind in the service of the Supreme Lord, one has to worship the spotless moon, Gaurachandra. Those who are materially passionate, or those who want to exhibit their intelligence for material advancement in life, are generally worshippers of Lord Brahma, and persons who are in the gross ignorance of identifying with the body worship Lord Shiva. Materialists like Hiranyakshipu and Ravana are worshippers of Lord Brahma or Lord Shiva, but Prahlada and other devotees in the service of Krishna consciousness worship the Supreme Lord, the Personality of Godhead. Text 62. When the demigods and presiding deities of the various senses were thus manifested, they wanted to wake their origin of appearance. But upon failing to do so, they re-entered the body of the Virat Purusha, one after another, in order to wake him. Purport. In order to wake the sleeping deity controller within, one has to re-channel the sense activities from concentration on the outside to concentration inside. In the following verses, the sense activities, which are required to wake the Virat Purusha, will be explained very nicely. Text 63. The god of fire entered his mouth with the organ of speech, but the Virat Purusha could not be aroused. Then the god of wind entered his nostrils with the sense of smell, but still the Virat Purusha refused to be awakened. Text 64. The sun god entered the eyes of the Virat Purusha with the sense of sight, but still the Virat Purusha did not get up. Similarly, the predominating deities of the directions entered through his ears with the sense of hearing, but still he did not get up. Text 65. The predominating deities of the skin, herbs, and seasoning plants entered the skin of the Virat Purusha with the hair of the body, but the cosmic being refused to get up even then. The god predominating over water entered his organ of generation with the faculty of procreation, but the Virat Purusha still would not rise. Text 66. The god of death entered his anus with the organ of defecation, but the Virat Purusha could not be spurred to activity. The god Indra entered the hands with their power of grasping and dropping things, but the Virat Purusha would not get up even then. Text 67. Lord Vishnu entered his feet with the faculty of locomotion, but the Virat Purusha refused to stand up even then. The rivers entered his blood vessels with the blood and the power of circulation, but still the cosmic being could not be made to stir. Text 68. The ocean entered his abdomen with hunger and thirst, but the cosmic being refused to rise even then. The moon god entered his heart with the mind, but the cosmic being would not be roused. Text 69. Brahma also entered his heart with intelligence, but even then the cosmic being could not be prevailed upon to get up. Lord Rudra also entered his heart with the ego, but even then the cosmic being did not stir. Text 70. However, when the inner controller, the deity presiding over consciousness, entered the heart with reason, at that very moment the cosmic being arose from the causal waters. Text 71. When a man is sleeping, all his material assets, namely the vital energy, the senses for recording knowledge, the senses for working, the mind and the intelligence, cannot arouse him. He can be aroused only when the Supersoul helps him. Purport. The explanation of Sankhya philosophy is described here in detail in the sense that the Virat Purusha, or the universal form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is the original source of all the various sense organs and their presiding deities. The relationship between the Virat Purusha and the presiding deities, or the living entities, is so intricate that simply by exercising the sense organs, which are related to their presiding deities, the Virat Purusha cannot be aroused. It is not possible to arouse the Virat Purusha or to link with the Supreme Absolute Personality of Godhead by material activities. Only by devotional service and detachment can one perform the process of linking with the Absolute. Text 72. Therefore, through devotion, detachment, and advancement in spiritual knowledge acquired through concentrated devotional service, one should contemplate that Supersoul as present in this very body, although simultaneously apart from it. Purport. One can realize the Supersoul within oneself. He is within one's body, but apart from the body, or transcendental to the body. Although sitting in the same body as the individual soul, the Supersoul has no affection for the body, whereas the individual soul does. One has to detach himself, therefore, from this material body by discharging devotional service. It is clearly mentioned here, bhaktya, that one has to execute devotional service to the Supreme. As it is stated in the first canto, second chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam 127, Vasudeva Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojita. When Vasudeva, the all-pervading Vishnu, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is served in completely pure devotion, detachment from the material world immediately begins. The purpose of Sankhya is to detach oneself from material contamination. This can be achieved simply by devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. When one is detached from the attraction of material prosperity, one can actually concentrate his mind upon the Supersoul. As long as the mind is distracted towards the material, there is no possibility of concentrating one's mind and intelligence upon the Supreme Personality of Godhead, or his partial representation, Supersoul. In other words, one cannot concentrate one's mind and energy upon the Supreme unless one is detached from the material world. Following detachment from the material world, one can actually attain transcendental knowledge of the Absolute Truth. As long as one is entangled in sense enjoyment or material enjoyment, it is not possible to understand the Absolute Truth. This is also confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 18:54. One who is freed from material contamination is joyful and can enter into a devotional service, and by devotional service he can be liberated. In the Srimad Bhagavatam first canto, it is stated that one becomes joyful by discharging devotional service. In that joyful attitude, one can understand the science of God, or Krishna consciousness. Otherwise, it is not possible. The analytical study of the elements of material nature and the concentration of the mind upon the Supersoul are the sum and substance of the Sankhya philosophical system. The perfection of this Sankhya Yoga culminates in devotional service unto the Absolute Truth. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta Purports of the third canto, 26th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Fundamental Principles of Material Nature. Chapter 27. Understanding Material Nature. Text 1. The personality of Godhead Kapila continued, when the living entity is thus unaffected by the modes of material nature, because he is unchanging and does not claim proprietorship, he remains apart from the reactions of the modes, although abiding in a material body, just as the sun remains aloof from its reflection on water. Purport. In the previous chapter, Lord Kapiladeva has concluded that simply by beginning the discharge of devotional service, one can attain detachment and transcendental knowledge for understanding the science of God. Here the same principle is confirmed. A person who is detached from the modes of material nature remains just like the sun reflected on water. When the sun is reflected on water, the movement of the water, or the coolness or unsteadiness of the water cannot affect the sun. Similarly, Vasudeva Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojita, Bhagavatam 127, when one engages fully in the activities of devotional service, Bhakti Yoga, he becomes just like the sun reflected on water. Although a devotee appears to be in the material world, actually he is in the transcendental world, as the reflection of the sun appears to be on the water, but is many millions of miles away from the water. So one engaged in the Bhakti Yoga process is nirguna, or unaffected by the qualities of material nature. Avikara means without change. It is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita that each and every living entity is part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, and thus his eternal position is to cooperate or to dovetail his energy with the Supreme Lord. That is his unchanging position. As soon as he employs his energy in activities for sense gratification, this change of position is called vikara. Similarly, even in this material body, when he practices devotional service under the direction of the spiritual master, he comes to the position which is without change, because that is his natural duty. As stated in the Srimad Bhagavatam, liberation means reinstatement in one's original position. The original position is one of rendering service to the Lord, Bhakti Yogana Bhaktya. One who becomes detached from material attraction and engages fully in devotional service, that is changelessness. Akartitvat means not doing anything for sense gratification. When one does something at his own risk, there is a sense of proprietorship, and therefore a reaction. But when one does everything for Krishna, there is no proprietorship over the activities. By changelessness, and by not claiming the proprietorship of activities, one can immediately situate himself in the transcendental position, in which one is not touched by the modes of material nature, just as the reflection of the sun is unaffected by the water. Text 2. When the soul is under the spell of material nature and false ego, identifying his body as the self, he becomes absorbed in material activities, and by the influence of false ego, he thinks that he is the proprietor of everything. Purport. Actually, the conditioned soul is forced to act under the pressure of the modes of material nature. The living entity has no independence. When he is under the direction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he is free. But when, under the impression that he is satisfying his senses, he engages in sense gratificatory activities, he is actually under the spell of material nature. In Bhagavad Gita it is said, Prakriti Kriyamanani. One acts according to the particular modes of nature he has acquired. Guna refers to the qualities of nature. He is under the qualities of nature, but he falsely thinks that he is the proprietor. This false sense of proprietorship can be avoided simply by engaging oneself in devotional service under the direction of the Supreme Lord, or his bona fide representative, Arjuna, in Bhagavad Gita, was trying to accept for himself the responsibility for killing his grandfather and teacher in the fight. But he became freed from that proprietorship of action when he acted under the direction of Krishna. He fought, but he was actually freed from the reactions of fighting, although in the beginning, when he was non-violent, unwilling to fight, the entire responsibility was upon him. That is the difference between liberation and conditioning. A conditioned soul may be very good and act in the mode of goodness, but still he is conditioned under the spell of material nature. A devotee, however, acts completely under the direction of the Supreme Lord. Thus his actions may not appear to be of a very high quality to the common man, but the devotee has no responsibility. Text 3. The conditioned soul therefore transmigrates into different species of life, higher and lower, because of his association with the modes of material nature. Unless he is relieved of material activities, he has to accept this position because of his faulty work. Purport. Here the word karmadosai means by faulty actions. This refers to any activity, good or bad, performed in this material world. They are all contaminated, faulty actions because of material association. The foolish conditioned soul may think that he is offering charity by opening hospitals for material benefit, or by opening an educational institution for material education. But he does not know that all such work is also faulty, because it will not give him relief from the process of transmigration from one body to another. It is clearly stated here, Sad asan misra yonishu. This means that one may take birth in a very high family, or he may take his birth in higher planets among the demigods for his so-called pious activities in the material world. But this work is also faulty because it does not give liberation. To take birth in a nice place or a high family does not mean that one avoids undergoing the material tribulations, the pangs of birth, death, old age, and disease. A conditioned soul under the spell of material nature cannot understand that any action he performs for sense gratification is faulty, and that only his activities in devotional service to the Lord can give him release from the reaction of faulty activities. Because he does not cease such faulty activities, he has to change to different bodies, some high and some low. That is called samsara padavim, which means the material world, from which there is no release. One who desires material liberation has to turn his activities to devotional service. There is no alternative. Text 4. Actually, a living entity is transcendental to material existence, but because of his mentality of lording it over material nature, his material existential condition does not cease, and just as in a dream, he is affected by all sorts of disadvantages. Purport. The example of a dream is very appropriate. Due to different mental conditions in dreams, we are put into advantageous and disadvantageous positions. Similarly, the spirit soul has nothing to do with this material nature, but because of his mentality of lording it over, he is put into the position of conditional existence. Conditional existence is described here as dhyayata visayan asya. Visaya means an object of enjoyment. As long as one continues to think that he can enjoy material advantages, he is in conditioned life. But as soon as he comes to his senses, he develops the knowledge that he is not the enjoyer, for the only enjoyer is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 5.29. He is the beneficiary for all the results of sacrifices and penances, Bhaktaram Yajna Tapasyam, and he is the proprietor of all the three worlds, Sharvaloka Maheshwaram. He is the actual friend of all living entities, but instead of leaving proprietorship, enjoyment, and the actual position as the friend of all living entities to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, we claim that we are the proprietors, the enjoyers, and the friends. We perform philanthropic work, thinking that we are the friends of human society. Someone may proclaim himself to be a very good national worker, the best friend of the people and of the country, but actually he cannot be the greatest friend of everyone. The only friend is Krishna. One should try to raise the consciousness of the conditioned soul to the platform of understanding that Krishna is his actual friend. If one makes friendship with Krishna, one will never be cheated, and he will get all help needed. Arousing this consciousness of the conditioned soul is the greatest service, not posing oneself as a great friend of another living entity. The power of friendship is limited. Although one claims to be a friend, he cannot be a friend unlimitedly. There are an unlimited number of living entities, and our resources are limited. Therefore, we cannot be of any real benefit to the people in general. The best service to the people in general is to awaken them to Krishna consciousness, so that they may know that the supreme enjoyer, the supreme proprietor, and the supreme friend is Krishna. Then this illusory dream of lording it over material nature will vanish. Text 5. It is the duty of every conditioned soul to engage his polluted consciousness, which is now attached to material enjoyment, in very serious devotional service with detachment. Thus his mind and consciousness will be under full control. Purport. The process of liberation is very nicely explained in this verse. The cause of one's becoming conditioned by material nature is his thinking himself the enjoyer, the proprietor, or the friend of all living entities. This false thinking is a result of contemplation on sense enjoyment. When one thinks that he is the best friend to his countrymen, to society, or to humanity, and he engages in various nationalistic, philanthropic, and altruistic activities, all that is just so much concentration on sense gratification. The so-called national leader or humanist does not serve everyone. He serves his senses only. That is a fact. But the conditioned soul cannot understand this because he is bewildered by the spell of material nature. It is therefore recommended in this verse that one engage very seriously in the devotional service of the Lord. This means that one should not think that he is the proprietor, benefactor, friend, or enjoyer. He should always be cognizant that the real enjoyer is Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That is the basic principle of Bhakti Yoga. One must be firmly convinced of these three principles. One should always think that Krishna is the proprietor, Krishna is the enjoyer, and Krishna is the friend. Not only should he understand these principles himself, but he should try to convince others and propagate Krishna consciousness. As soon as one engages in such serious devotional service of the Lord, naturally the propensity to falsely claim lordship over material nature disappears. That detachment is called viragya. Instead of being absorbed in so-called material lordship, one engages in Krishna consciousness. That is control of consciousness. The yoga process necessitates controlling the senses. Yoga indriya samyama. Since the senses are always active, their activities should be engaged in devotional service. One cannot stop their activities. If one wants to artificially stop the activities of the senses, his attempt will be a failure. Even the great yogi Vishwamitra, who was trying to control his senses by the yoga process, fell victim to the beauty of Menaka. There are many such instances. Unless one's mind and consciousness are fully engaged in devotional service, there is always the opportunity for the mind to become occupied with desires for sense gratification. One particular point mentioned in this verse is very significant. It is said here, prashaktam asatam pati. The mind is always attracted by asat, the temporary material existence, because we have been associated with material nature since time immemorial. We have become accustomed to our attachment to this temporary material nature. The mind has to be fixed at the eternal lotus feet of the Supreme Lord. Savai mana Krishna padaravindayo. One has to fix the mind at the lotus feet of Krishna, then everything will be very nice. Thus the seriousness of Bhakti Yoga is stressed in this verse. Text 6. One has to become faithful by practicing the controlling process of the yoga system and must elevate himself to the platform of unalloyed devotional service by chanting and hearing about me. Purport. Yoga is practiced in 8 different stages: yama, niyama, asana, pranayama, pratyahara, dharana, dhyana, and samadhi. Yama and niyama mean practicing the controlling process by following strict regulations, and asana refers to the sitting postures. These help raise one to the standard of faithfulness in devotional service. The practice of yoga by physical exercise is not the ultimate goal. The real end is to concentrate and to control the mind and train oneself to be situated in faithful devotional service. Bhavana or bhava is a very important factor in the practice of yoga or in any spiritual process. Bhava is explained in Bhagavad Gita 10.8, Buddha bhava samanvita. One should be absorbed in the thought of love of Krishna. When one knows that Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is the source of everything, and that everything emanates from him, Aham sarvasya prabhava. Then one understands the Vedanta aphorism, Janmadi asya yata, the original source of everything, and then he can become absorbed in bhava, or the preliminary stage of love of Godhead. Rupa Goswami explains very nicely in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu how this bhava, or preliminary stage of love of God, is achieved. He states that one first of all has to become a faithful Sradayanvita. Faith is attained by controlling the senses. He states that one first of all has to become faithful, Sradayanvita. Faith is attained by controlling the senses, either by yoga practice, following the rules and regulations, and practicing the sitting postures, or by engaging directly in bhakti yoga as recommended in the previous verse. Of the 9 different items of bhakti yoga, the first and foremost is to chant and hear about the Lord. That is also mentioned here. Matkatha sravanana cha. One may come to understand of faithfulness by following the rules and regulations of the yoga system, and the same goal can be achieved simply by chanting and hearing about the transcendental activities of the Lord. The word cha is significant. Bhakti yoga is direct, and the other process is indirect. But even if the indirect process is taken, there is no success unless one comes fully to the direct process of hearing and chanting the glories of the Lord. Therefore, the word satyana is used here. In this connection, Swami Sridhara comments that satyana means nishkapatana, without duplicity. The impersonalists are full of duplicity. Sometimes they pretend to execute devotional service, but their ultimate idea is to become one with the Supreme. This is duplicity, kapata. The Bhagavatam does not allow this duplicity. In the beginning of Srimad Bhagavatam it is clearly stated, Paramo Nirmatsaranam. This treatise, Srimad Bhagavatam, is meant for those who are completely free from envy. The same point is again stressed here. Unless one is completely faithful to the Supreme Personality of Godhead and engages himself in the process of hearing and chanting the glories of the Lord, there is no possibility for liberation. Text 7. In executing devotional service, one has to see every living entity equally, without enmity towards anyone, yet without intimate connections with anyone. One has to observe celibacy, be grave and execute his eternal activities, offering the results to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Purport. A devotee of the Supreme Personality of Godhead who seriously engages in devotional service is equal to all living entities. There are various species of living entities, but a devotee does not see the outward covering. He sees the inner soul inhabiting the body. Because each and every soul is part and parcel of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he does not see any difference. That is the vision of a learned devotee. As explained in Bhagavad Gita, a devotee or a learned sage does not see any difference between a learned brahmana, a dog, an elephant, or a cow, because he knows that the body is the outer covering only, and that the soul is actually part and parcel of the Supreme Lord. A devotee has no enmity towards any living entity, but that does not mean that he mixes with everyone. That is prohibited. Aprasangata means not to be in intimate touch with everyone. A devotee is concerned with his execution of devotional service, and he should therefore mix with devotees only, in order to advance his objective. He has no business mixing with others, for although he does not see anyone as his enemy, his dealings are only with persons who engage in devotional service. A devotee should observe the vow of celibacy. Celibacy does not necessitate that one be absolutely free from sex life. Satisfaction with one's wife is permitted, also under the vow of celibacy. The best policy is to avoid sex life altogether. That is preferable. Otherwise, a devotee can get married under religious principles and live peacefully with a wife. A devotee should not speak needlessly. A serious devotee has no time to speak of nonsense. He is always busy in Krishna consciousness. Whenever he speaks about Krishna. Mauna means silence. Silence does not mean that one should not speak at all, but that he should not speak of nonsense. He should be very enthusiastic in speaking about Krishna. Another important item described here is svadharmana, or being exclusively occupied in one's eternal occupation. which is to act as the eternal servitor of the Lord, or to act in Krishna consciousness. The next word, Baliyasa, means offering the results of all activities to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. A devotee does not act on his personal account for sense gratification. Whatever he earns, whatever he eats, and whatever he does, he offers for the satisfaction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Text 8. For his income, a devotee should be satisfied with what he earns without great difficulty. He should not eat more than what is necessary. He should live in a secluded place and always be thoughtful, peaceful, friendly, compassionate, and self-realized. Purport. Everyone who has accepted a material body must maintain the necessities of the body by acting or earning some livelihood. A devotee should only work for such income as is absolutely necessary. He should be satisfied always with such income, and should not endeavor to earn more and more simply to accumulate the unnecessary. A person in the conditioned state who has no money is always found working very hard to earn some with the object of lording it over material nature. Kapiladeva instructs that we should not endeavor hard for things which may come automatically, without extraneous labor. The exact word used in this connection, yadrichaya, means that every living entity has a predestined happiness and distress in his present body. This is called the law of karma. It is not possible that simply by endeavors to accumulate more money, a person will be able to do so. Otherwise, almost everyone would be on the same level of wealth. In reality, everyone is earning and acquiring according to his predestined karma. According to the Bhagavatam conclusion, we are sometimes faced with dangerous or miserable conditions without endeavoring for them, and similarly, we may have prosperous conditions without endeavoring for them. We are advised to let these things come as predestined. We should engage our valuable time in prosecuting Krishna consciousness. In other words, one should be satisfied by his natural condition. If by predestination one is put into a certain condition of life, which is not very prosperous in comparison to another's position, one should not be disturbed. He should simply try to utilize his valuable time to advance in Krishna consciousness. Advancement in Krishna consciousness does not depend on any materially prosperous or distressed condition. It is free from the conditions imposed by material life. A very poor man can execute Krishna consciousness as effectively as a very rich man. One should therefore be very satisfied with his position as offered by the Lord. Another word here is mitabuk. This means that one should eat only as much as necessary to maintain the body and soul together. One should not be gluttonous to satisfy the tongue. Grains, fruits, milk, and similar foods are allotted for human consumption. One should not be excessively eager to satisfy the tongue and eat that which is not meant for humanity. Particularly, a devotee should eat only prasada, or food which is offered to the personality of Godhead. His position is to accept the remnants of those foodstuffs. Innocent foods like grains, vegetables, fruits, flowers, and milk preparations are offered to the Lord, and therefore there is no scope for offering foods which are in the modes of passion and ignorance. A devotee should not be greedy. It is also recommended that the devotee should be muni, or thoughtful. He should always think of Krishna and how to render better service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That should be his only anxiety. As a materialist is always thoughtful about improving his material condition, a devotee's thoughts should always be engaged in improving his condition in Krishna consciousness. Therefore, he should be a muni. The next item recommended is that a devotee should live in a secluded place. Generally, a common man is interested in pounds, shillings, and pence, or materialistic advancement in life, which is unnecessary for a devotee. A devotee should select a place of residence where everyone is interested in devotional service. Generally, therefore, a devotee goes to a sacred place of pilgrimage where devotees live. It is recommended that he live in a place where there is no large number of ordinary men. It is very important to live in a secluded place. Viviktasarana. The next item is santa, or peacefulness. The devotee should not be agitated. He should be satisfied with his natural income, eat only as much as he needs to keep his health, live in a secluded place, and always remain peaceful. Peace of mind is necessary for prosecuting Krishna consciousness. The next item is Maitra, friendliness. A devotee should be friendly to everyone, but his intimate friendship should be with devotees only. With others he should be official. He may say, "Yes, sir, what you say is all right," but he is not intimate with them. A devotee should, however, have compassion for persons who are innocent, who are neither atheistic nor very much advanced in spiritual realization. A devotee should be compassionate towards them and instruct them as far as possible in making advancement in Krishna consciousness. A devotee should always remain Atmavan, or situated in his spiritual position. He should not forget that his main concern is to make advancement in spiritual consciousness, or Krishna consciousness, and he should not ignorantly identify himself with the body or the mind. Atma means the body or the mind, but here the word Atmavan especially means that one should be self-possessed. He should always remain in the pure consciousness that he is spirit soul and not the material body or the mind. That will make him progress confidently in Krishna consciousness. Text 9. One's seeing power should be increased through knowledge of spirit and matter, and one should not unnecessarily identify himself with the body and thus become attracted by bodily relationships. Purport. The conditioned souls are eager to identify with the body and consider that the body is myself, and that anything in relationship with the body or possessions of the body is mine. In Sanskrita, this is called ahammamata, and it is the root cause of all conditional life. A person should see things as the combination of matter and spirit. He should distinguish between the nature of matter and the nature of spirit, and his real identification should be with spirit, not with matter. By this knowledge, one should avoid the false bodily concept of life. Text 10. One should be situated in the transcendental position beyond the stages of material consciousness and should be aloof from all other conceptions of life. Thus, realizing freedom from false ego, one should see his own self just as he sees the sun in the sky. Purport. Consciousness acts in 3 stages under the material conception of life. When we are awake, consciousness acts in a particular way. When we are asleep, it acts in a different way. And when we are in deep sleep, consciousness acts in still another way. To become Krishna conscious, one has to become transcendental to these 3 stages of consciousness. Our present consciousness should be freed from all perceptions of life other than consciousness of Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is called Duribhutanya Darshana, which means that when one attains perfect Krishna consciousness, he does not see anything but Krishna. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, it is said that the perfect devotee may see many movable and immovable objects, but in everything he sees that the energy of Krishna is acting. As soon as he remembers the energy of Krishna, he immediately remembers Krishna in his personal form. Therefore, in all his observations, he sees Krishna only. In the Brahma Samhita 538, it is stated that when one's eyes are smeared with love of Krishna, Premanjana Churita, he always sees Krishna outside and inside. This is confirmed here. One should be freed from all other vision, and in that way he is freed from the false egoistic identification and sees himself as the eternal servitor of the Lord. Chakshusivarkam, as we can see the sun without a doubt, one who is fully developed in Krishna consciousness sees Krishna and his energy. By this vision one becomes Atmadirk, or self-realized. When the false ego of identifying the body with the self is removed, actual vision of life is perceivable. The senses, therefore, also become purified. Real service of the Lord begins when the senses are purified. One does not have to stop the activities of the senses, but the false ego of identifying with the body has to be removed. Then the senses automatically become purified, and with purified senses one can actually discharge devotional service. Text 11. A liberated soul realizes the absolute personality of Godhead, who is transcendental and who is manifest as a reflection even in the false ego. He is the support of the material cause, and he enters into everything. He is absolute, one without a second, and he is the eyes of the illusory energy. Purport. A pure devotee can see the presence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in everything, materially manifested. He is present there only as a reflection, but a pure devotee can realize that in the darkness of material illusion, the only light is the Supreme Lord, who is its support. It is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita that the background of the material manifestation is Lord Krishna, and as confirmed in the Brahma Samhita, Krishna is the cause of all causes. In the Brahma Samhita, it is stated that the Supreme Lord, by his partial or plenary expansion, is present not only within this universe and each and every universe, but in every atom, although he is one without a second. The word advayam, without a second, which is used in this verse, indicates that although the Supreme Personality of Godhead is represented in everything, including the atoms, he is not divided. His presence in everything is explained in the next verse. Text 12. The presence of the Supreme Lord can be realized just as the sun is realized, first as a reflection on water, and again as a second reflection on the wall of a room, although the sun itself is situated in the sky. Purport. The example given herewith is perfect. The sun is situated in the sky, far, far away from the surface of the earth, but its reflection can be seen in a pot of water in the corner of a room. The room is dark, and the sun is far away in the sky, but the sun's reflection on the water illuminates the darkness of the room. A pure devotee can realize the presence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in everything by the reflection of his energy. In the Vishnu Purana, it is stated that as the presence of fire is understood by heat and light, so the Supreme Personality of Godhead, although one without a second, is perceived everywhere by the diffusion of his different energies. It is confirmed in the Isopanishad that the presence of the Lord is perceived everywhere by the liberated soul, just as the sunshine and the reflection can be perceived everywhere, although the sun is situated far away from the surface of the globe. Text 13. The self-realized soul is thus reflected first in the threefold ego, and then in the body, senses, and mind. Purport. The conditioned soul thinks, I am this body, but a liberated soul thinks, I am not this body, I am spirit soul. This I am is called ego, or identification of the self. I am this body, or everything in relationship to the body is mine, is called false ego. But when one is self-realized and thinks that he is an eternal servitor of the Supreme Lord, that identification is real ego. One conception is in the darkness of the threefold qualities of material nature, goodness, passion, and ignorance, and the other is in the pure state of goodness, called Sudasattva or Vasudeva. When we say that we give up our ego, this means that we give up our false ego, but real ego is always present. When one is reflected through the material contamination of the body and mind in false identification, he is in the conditional state, but when he is reflected in the pure stage, he is called liberated. The identification of oneself with one's material possessions in the conditional stage must be purified, and one must identify himself in relationship with the Supreme Lord. In the conditioned state, one accepts everything as an object of sense gratification, and in the liberated state, one accepts everything for the service of the Supreme Lord. Krishna consciousness, devotional service, is the actual liberated stage of a living entity. Otherwise, both accepting and rejecting on the material platform, or in voidness or impersonalism, are imperfect conditions for the pure soul. By the understanding of the pure soul, called Satyadirk, one can see everything as a reflection of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. A concrete example can be given in this connection. A conditioned soul sees a very beautiful rose, and he thinks that the nice aromatic flower should be used for his own sense gratification. This is one kind of vision. A liberated soul, however, sees the same flower as a reflection of the Supreme Lord. He thinks this beautiful flower is made possible by the superior energy of the Supreme Lord. Therefore it belongs to the Supreme Lord and should be utilized in his service. These are two kinds of vision. The conditioned soul sees the flower for his own enjoyment, and the devotee sees the flower as an object to be used in the service of the Lord. In the same way, one can see the reflection of the Supreme Lord in one's own senses, mind, and body, in everything. With that correct vision, one can engage everything in the service of the Lord. It is stated in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu that one who has engaged everything, his vital energy, his wealth, his intelligence, and his words, in the service of the Lord, or who desires to engage all these in the service of the Lord, no matter how he is situated, is to be considered a liberated soul, or Satyadik. Such a man has understood things as they are. Text 14. Although a devotee appears to be merged in the five material elements, the objects of material enjoyment, the material senses and material mind and intelligence, he is understood to be awake and to be freed from the false ego. Purport. The explanation by Rupa Goswami in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu of how a person can be liberated even in this body is more elaborately explained in this verse. The living entity who has become Satyadik, who realizes his position in relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, may remain apparently merged in the five elements of matter, the five material sense objects, the 10 senses, and the mind and intelligence, but still he is considered to be awake and to be freed from the reaction of false ego. Here the word lina is very significant. The Mayavadi philosophers recommend merging in the impersonal effulgence of Brahman. That is their ultimate goal or destination. That merging is also mentioned here, but in spite of merging, one can keep his individuality. The example given by Jiva Goswami is that a green bird that enters a green tree appears to merge in the color of greenness, but actually the bird does not lose its individuality. Similarly, a living entity merged either in the material nature or in the spiritual nature does not give up his individuality. Real individuality is to understand oneself to be the eternal servitor of the Supreme Lord. This information is received from the mouth of Lord Chaitanya. He said clearly upon the inquiry of Sanatana Goswami that a living entity is the servitor of Krishna eternally. Krishna also confirms in Bhagavad Gita that the living entity is eternally his part and parcel. The part and parcel is meant to serve the whole. This is individuality. It is so even in this material existence when the living entity apparently merges in matter. His gross body is made up of five elements. His subtle body is made of mind, intelligence, false ego, and contaminated consciousness, and he has five active senses and five knowledge-acquiring senses. In this way, he merges in matter. But even while merged in the 24 elements of matter, he can keep his individuality as the eternal servitor of the Lord. Either in the spiritual nature or in the material nature, such a servitor is to be considered a liberated soul. That is the explanation of the authorities, and it is confirmed in this verse. Text 15. The living entity can vividly feel his existence as the seer, but because of the disappearance of the ego during the state of deep sleep, he falsely takes himself to be lost, like a man who has lost his fortune and feels distressed, thinking himself to be lost. Purport. Only in ignorance does a living entity think that he is lost. If by attainment of knowledge he comes to the real position of his eternal existence, he knows that he is not lost. An appropriate example is mentioned herein. Nastavita ivatura. A person who has lost a great sum of money may think that he is lost, but actually he is not lost, only his money is lost. But due to his absorption in the money or identification with the money, he thinks that he is lost. Similarly, when we falsely identify with matter as our field of activities, we think that we are lost, although actually we are not lost. As soon as a person is awakened to the pure knowledge of understanding that he is an eternal servitor of the Lord, his own real position is revived. A living entity can never be lost. When one forgets his identity in deep sleep, he becomes absorbed in dreams, and he may think himself a different person, or may think himself lost, but actually his identity is intact. This concept of being lost is due to false ego, and it continues as long as one is not awakened to the sense of his existence as an eternal servitor of the Lord. The Mayavadi philosopher's concept of becoming one with the Supreme Lord is another symptom of being lost in false ego. One may falsely claim that he is the Supreme Lord, but actually he is not. This is the last snare of Maya's influence upon the living entity. To think oneself equal with the Supreme Lord, or to think oneself to be the Supreme Lord himself, is also due to the false ego. Text 16. When by mature understanding one can realize his individuality, then the situation he accepts under false ego becomes manifest to him. Purport. The Mayavadi philosopher's position is that at the ultimate issue, the individual is lost. Everything becomes one, and there is no distinction between the knower, the knowable, and knowledge. But by minute analysis we can see that this is not correct. Individuality is never lost, even when one thinks that the three different principles, namely the knower, the knowable, and knowledge, are amalgamated and merged into one. The very concept that the three merge into one is another form of knowledge, and since the perceiver of the knowledge still exists, how can one say that the knower, knowledge, and the knowable have become one? The individual soul who is perceiving the knowledge still remains an individual, both in material existence and in spiritual existence. The individuality continues. The only difference is in the quality of the identity. In the material identity, the false ego acts, and because of false identification, one takes things to be different from what they actually are. That is the basic principle of conditional life. Similarly, when the false ego is purified, one takes everything in the right perspective. That is the state of liberation. It is stated in the Upanishad that everything belongs to the Lord. Isavasyam idam sharvam. Everything exists on the energy of the Supreme Lord. This is also confirmed in Bhagavad Gita, because everything is produced of his energy and exists on his energy. The energy is not different from him, but still the Lord declares, I am not there. When one clearly understands one's constitutional position, everything becomes manifest. False egoistic acceptance of things conditions one, whereas acceptance of things as they are makes one liberated. The example given in the previous verse is applicable here. Due to absorption of one's identity in his money, when the money is lost, he thinks that he is also lost, but actually he is not identical with the money, nor does the money belong to him. When the actual situation is revealed, we understand that the money does not belong to any individual person or living entity, nor is it produced by man. Ultimately, the money is the property of the Supreme Lord, and there is no question of its being lost. But as long as one falsely thinks, I am the enjoyer, or I am the Lord, this concept of life continues, and one remains conditioned. As soon as this false ego is eliminated, one is liberated. As confirmed in the Bhagavatam, situation in one's real constitutional position is called mukti, or liberation. Text 17. Sri Devahuti inquired, My dear Brahmana, does material nature ever give release to the spirit soul? Since one is attracted to the other eternally, how is their separation possible? Purport. Devahuti, the mother of Kapiladeva, here makes her first inquiry. Although one may understand that spirit, soul, and matter are different, their actual separation is not possible, either by philosophical speculation or by proper understanding. The spirit soul is the marginal potency of the Supreme Lord, and matter is the external potency of the Lord. The two eternal potencies have somehow or other been combined, and since it is so difficult to separate one from the other, how is it possible for the individual soul to become liberated? By practical experience, one can see that when the soul is separated from the body has no real existence, and when the body is separated from the soul, one cannot perceive the existence of the soul. As long as the soul and the body are combined, we can understand that there is life. But when they are separated, there is no manifested existence of the body or the soul. This question asked by Devahuti of Kapiladeva is more or less impelled by the philosophy of voidism. The voidists say that consciousness is a product of a combination of matter, and that as soon as the consciousness is gone, the material combination dissolves, and therefore there is ultimately nothing but voidness. This absence of consciousness is called nirvana in Mayavada philosophy. Text 18. As there is no separate existence of the earth and its aroma, or of water and its taste, there cannot be any separate existence of intelligence and consciousness. Purport. The example is given here that anything material has an aroma. The flower, the earth, everything has an aroma. If the aroma is separated from the matter cannot be identified. If there is no taste to water, the water has no meaning. If there is no heat in the fire has no meaning. Similarly, when there is want of intelligence, spirit has no meaning. Text 19. Hence, even though he is the passive performer of all activities, how can there be freedom for the soul as long as material nature acts on him and binds him? Purport. Although the living entity desires freedom from the contamination of matter, he is not given release. Actually, as soon as a living entity puts himself under the control of the modes of material nature, his acts are influenced by the qualities of material nature, and he becomes passive. It is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita, Prakrite Kriyamanani Gunai. The living entity acts according to the qualities or modes of material nature. He falsely thinks that he is acting, but unfortunately he is passive. In other words, he has no opportunity to get out of the control of material nature because it has already conditioned him. In Bhagavad Gita, it is also stated that it is very difficult to get out of the clutches of material nature. One may try in different ways to think that everything is void and the ultimate issue, that there is no God, and that even if the background of everything is spirit, it is impersonal. This speculation may go on, but actually it is very difficult to get out of the clutches of material nature. Devahuti poses the question that although one may speculate in many ways, where is liberation as long as one is under the spell of material nature? The answer is also found in Bhagavad Gita 7:14. Only one who has surrendered himself under the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord Krishna, Mam Eva Ye Prapadyante, can be free from the clutches of Maya. Since Devahuti is gradually coming to the point of surrender, her questions are very intelligent. How can one be liberated? How can one in a pure state of spiritual existence as long as he is strongly held by the modes of material nature? This is also an indication to the false meditator. There are many so-called meditators who think, I am the Supreme Spirit Soul, I am conducting the activities of material nature. Under my direction the sun is moving and the moon is rising. They think that by such contemplation or meditation they can become free, but it is seen that just 3 minutes after finishing such nonsensical meditation, they are immediately captured by the modes of material nature. Immediately after his high-sounding meditation, a meditator becomes thirsty and wants to smoke or drink. He is under the strong grip of material nature, yet he thinks that he is already free from the clutches of Maya. This question of Devahuti's is for such a person who falsely claims that he is everything, that ultimately everything is void, and that there are no sinful or pious activities. These are all atheistic inventions. Actually, unless a living entity surrenders unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as instructed in Bhagavad Gita, there is no liberation or freedom from the clutches of Maya. Text 20. Even if the great fear of bondage is avoided by mental speculation and inquiry into the fundamental principles, it may still appear again, since its cause has not ceased. Purport. Material bondage is caused by putting oneself under the control of matter because of the false ego of lording it over material nature. Bhagavad Gita 7:27 states, Ichchadvesa samapena. 2 kinds of propensities arise in the living entity. One propensity is ichcha, which means desire to lord it over material nature, or to be as great as the Supreme Lord. Everyone desires to be the greatest personality in this material world. Dvesha means envy. When one becomes envious of Krishna, or the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one thinks, why should Krishna be the all and all? I'm as good as Krishna. These two items, desire to be the Lord and envy of the Lord, are the beginning cause of material bondage. As long as a philosopher, salvationist, or voidist has some desire to be supreme, to be everything, or to deny the existence of God, the cause remains, and there is no question of his liberation. Devahuti very intelligently says, one may theoretically analyze and say that by knowledge he has become freed, but actually as long as the cause exists, he is not free. Bhagavad Gita confirms that after performing such speculative activities for many, many births, when one actually comes to his real consciousness and surrenders unto the Supreme Lord Krishna, then the fulfillment of his research and knowledge is actually achieved. There is a gulf of difference between theoretical freedom and actual freedom from material bondage. The Bhagavatam 10.14.4 says that if one gives up the auspicious path of devotional service and simply tries to know things by speculation, one wastes his valuable time. Krisyanti kevala buddha labdaye. The result of such a labor of love is simply labor. There is no other result. The labor of speculation is ended only by exhaustion. The example is given that there is no benefit in husking the skin off an empty patty. The rice is already gone. Similarly, simply by the speculative process, one cannot be freed from material bondage, for the cause still exists. One has to nullify the cause, and then the effect will be nullified. This is explained by the Supreme Personality of Godhead in the following verses. Text 21. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, one can get liberation by seriously discharging devotional service unto me, and thereby hearing for a long time about me or from me. By thus executing one's prescribed duties, there will be no reaction, and one will be freed from the contamination of matter. Purport. Sridhara Swami comments in this connection that by association with material nature alone one does not become conditioned. Conditional life begins only after one is infected by the modes of material nature. If someone is in contact with the police department, that does not mean that he is a criminal. As long as one does not commit criminal acts, even though there is a police department, he is not punished. Similarly, the liberated soul is not affected, although he is in the material nature. Even the Supreme Personality of Godhead is supposed to be in association with material nature when he descends, but he is not affected. One has to act in such a way that, in spite of being in the material nature, he is not affected by contamination. Although the lotus flower is in association with water, it does not mix with the water. That is how one has to live, as described here by the Personality of Godhead, Kapiladeva. Animita nimitena sva dharmanamalatmana. One can be liberated from all adverse circumstances simply by seriously engaging in devotional service. How this devotional service develops and becomes mature is explained here. In the beginning, one has to perform his prescribed duties with a clean mind. Clean consciousness means Krishna consciousness. One has to perform his prescribed duties in Krishna consciousness. There is no necessity of changing one's prescribed duties. One simply has to act in Krishna consciousness. In discharging Krishna conscious duties, one should determine whether, by his professional or occupational duties, Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is satisfied. In another place in the Bhagavatam it is said, Svanusthitasya dharmasya samsiddhir haritosanam. Everyone has become prescribed duties to perform, but the perfection of such duties will be reached only if the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Hari, is satisfied by such actions. For example, Arjuna's prescribed duty was to fight, and the perfection of his fighting was tested by the satisfaction of Krishna. Krishna wanted him to fight, and when he fought for the satisfaction of the Lord, that was the perfection of his professional devotional duty. On the other hand, when, contrary to the wish of Krishna, he was not willing to fight, that was imperfect. If one wants to perfect his life, he should discharge his prescribed duties for the satisfaction of Krishna. One must act in Krishna consciousness, for such action will never produce any reaction, animita nimitena. This is also confirmed in Bhagavad Gita, Najartat karmano nyatra. All activities should be performed simply for yajna, or the satisfaction of Vishnu. Everything done otherwise without the satisfaction of Vishnu or yajna produces bondage. So here it is also prescribed by Kapila Muni that one can transcend material entanglement by acting in Krishna consciousness, which means seriously engaging in devotional service. This serious devotional service can develop by hearing for long periods of time. Chanting and hearing is the beginning of the process of devotional service. One should associate with devotees and hear from them about the Lord's transcendental appearance, activities, disappearance, instructions, etc. There are two kinds of sruti or scripture. One is spoken by the Lord, and the other is spoken about the Lord and his devotees. Bhagavad Gita is the former, and the Srimad Bhagavatam the latter. One must hear these scriptures repeatedly from reliable sources in order to become fixed in serious devotional service. Through engagement in such devotional service, one becomes freed from the contamination of Maya. It is stated in the Srimad Bhagavatam that hearing about the Supreme Personality of Godhead cleanses the heart of all contamination caused by the influence of the three modes of material nature. By continuous, regular hearing, the effects of the contamination of lust and greed to enjoy or lord it over material nature diminish. And when lust and greed diminish, one then becomes situated in the mode of goodness. This is the stage of Brahman realization, or spiritual realization. In this way, one becomes fixed on the transcendental platform. Remaining fixed on the transcendental platform is liberation from material entanglement. Text 22. This devotional service has to be performed strongly in perfect knowledge and with transcendental vision. One must be strongly renounced and must engage in austerity and perform mystic yoga in order to be firmly fixed in self-absorption. Purport. Devotional service in Krishna consciousness cannot be performed blindly due to material emotion or mental concoction. It is specifically mentioned here that one has to perform devotional service in full knowledge by visualizing the Absolute Truth. We can understand about the Absolute Truth by evolving transcendental knowledge, and the result of such transcendental knowledge will be manifested by renunciation. That renunciation is not temporary or artificial, but is very strong. It is said that development of Krishna consciousness is exhibited by proportionate material detachment, or vairagya. If one does not separate himself from material enjoyment, it is to be understood that he is not advancing in Krishna consciousness. Renunciation in Krishna consciousness is so strong that it cannot be deviated by any attractive illusion. One has to perform devotional service in full tapasya, austerity. One should fast on the 2 Ekadasi days, which fall on the 11th day of the waxing and waning moon, and on the birthdays of Lord Krishna, Lord Ram, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. There are many such fasting days. Yogana means by controlling the senses and mind. Yoga Indriya Samyama. Yogana implies that one is seriously absorbed in the self and is able, by development of knowledge, to understand his constitutional position in relationship with the super-self. In this way, one becomes fixed in devotional service, and his faith cannot be shaken by any material allurement. Text 23. The influence of material nature has covered the living entity, and thus it is as if the living entity were always in a blazing fire, but by the process of seriously discharging devotional service, this influence can be removed, just as wooden sticks which cause a fire are themselves consumed by it. Purport. Fire is conserved in wooden sticks, and when circumstances are favorable, the fire is ignited. But the wooden sticks, which are the cause of the fire, are also consumed by the fire if it is properly dealt with. Similarly, the living entity's conditional life of material existence is due to his desire to lord it over material nature, and due to his envy of the Supreme Lord. Thus his main diseases are that he wants to be one with the Supreme Lord, or he wants to become the Lord of material nature. The karmis try to utilize the resources of material nature, and thus become its lord and enjoy sense gratification, and the jnanis, the salvationists, who have become frustrated in enjoying the material resources, want to become one with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, or merge into the impersonal effulgence. These two diseases are due to material contamination. Material contamination can be consumed by devotional service, because in devotional service these two diseases, namely the desire to lord it over material nature and the desire to become one with the Supreme Lord, are absent. Therefore the cause of material existence is at once consumed by the careful discharge of devotional service in Krishna consciousness. A devotee in full Krishna consciousness appears superficially to be a great karmi, always working, but the inner significance of the devotee's activities is that they are meant for the satisfaction of the Supreme Lord. This is called bhakti, or devotional service. Arjuna was apparently a fighter, but when by his fighting he satisfied the senses of Lord Krishna, he became a devotee. Since a devotee also engages in philosophical research to understand the Supreme Person as he is, his activities may thus appear to be like those of a mental speculator, but actually he is trying to understand the spiritual nature and transcendental activities. Thus, although the tendency for philosophical speculation exists, the material effects of fruitive activities and empiric speculation do not, because this activity is meant for the Supreme Personality of Godhead.